Breaking news here in the NFL Network newsroom. The Oakland Raiders moving on from Antonio Brown, providing him with his release this morning after he requested it. He's eligible to sign with any team. He is now a free agent in the National Football League. A lot of reactions pouring in. We just heard from Oakland Raiders quarterback Derek Carr's brother, David, here on NFL Network. Now we're going back to the phones to one of our Hall of Famers. It's Michael Irvin joining us now, wide receiver, Hall of Famer for the Dallas Cowboys. First of all, Irv, your reaction to the news this morning.
Well, I can't say that I was shocked after just the litany of things that have transpired. You know, I thought that they were trying to work through it. We just heard Gruden say he will be playing, that they had worked everything out. So you thought that everything would be fine, and maybe we'll get to some football Monday night. But obviously that's not the case. So I'm shocked that it has come to this, but I'm not shocked by the move that the Raiders had to make.
And as you said, Gruden said he will be playing. We thought everything was fine, but then comes another fine for Antonio Brown, $215,000. They tell him that they will void his guarantees. That put Antonio Brown in a position, right, to make this decision to ask for his release coming up this weekend, did it not?
Well, if you're going to really you're going after the $29 million or the $30 million, whatever that money was guaranteed, I'm sure he was not going to receive that all well, especially after, as he said, he probably thought it was all over after the apology and everything, So yeah, that does put him in a position. But Antonio Brown put Antonio Brown in this position. Let's be frank about that, guys. And honestly, as a guy that made bad decisions in his football career, and no matter what you do, somebody will always bring up those decisions. I feel sad for him. He's such an incredible player. But no matter what he does moving forward, this will always be attached to him. And that's hard. That's sad because I've watched this kid. I always say I measure men in distance traveled. I watched this kid work his way out of the ghettos of Miami to become one of the best receivers in the NFL. And now to be making some of the decisions that he's making, it just worries me. We cannot sit and watch this and say we're not concerned for whatever's going on with Antonio Brown. Mentally, I am concerned about what's going on with Antonio Brown mentally.
And so, Irv, looking at, as you said, one of the best receivers in the NFL, that's the reality regarding Antonio Brown and his ability to play football. The perception that he is going to cause a lot of problems is an issue. How do you think that he should try to present himself to teams? Do you think there's any way for him to mitigate that perception?
And I don't know at this place, at this point, because look, Antonio Brown had many years in Pittsburgh without this type of behavior, without these things going on. And this is something that has happened here of late. And it just seems like it's on a devolving slide here. It just keeps getting worse and worse. It's something every day. And for him to continue to be in that kind of a cycle and not see that, hey, maybe I'm my own worst enemy here, I'm telling you, it's cause for concern. I know how much this kid loves playing football. I know how much he loves working. I know how much he loves being around the guys. This just worries me that there's something going on that no one's talking about.
And so, Mike, what would you say to Antonio at this point?
Well, I would tell Antonio, first of all, if you still want to play football, and I know he still wants to play football, man, he has to try to find somewhere. First, he has to find himself. He has to find himself and understand whatever. And he knows that this is a team sport. So you have to come and be a part of the team. This is a team sport. It's just hard to watch it, man. It really is hard to watch it. And now you have to go, not just sell yourself on the football field, because we know what you can do on the football field, but you got to convince people that you are ready to play football and be a part of something, and that's a part of a team.
And we'll see what team he will be a part of in the future. Thanks to Michael Irvin, one of our Hall of Famers. Hey, folks, good game day morning, excuse me, not Good Morning Football, game day morning, season premiere coming up 9 a.m. Eastern. Tomorrow you can see Irv and Rich and Mooch and Kurt and all those guys right here on NFL Network. Irv, thanks, man. We got a reaction here from Tony Dungy, Hall of Fame coach. He says he feels sorry for Antonio Brown, as you just heard Michael Irvin say. He echoes those sentiments. Says that Antonio will miss out on the real joy that comes from being a part of the team. Coach Dungy says that Brown will be the big loser in the end. Welcome back. We're looking ahead to teams starting to pursue Antonio Brown. What do you think that's going to look like?
I think it's going to be a slow trickle. I don't think it's going to be a bunch of teams lining up at Antonio Brown's door, although I am told by our intrepid social media guy here, Charlie Frankel, that Antonio Brown just retweeted the Vancouver Canucks, who invited him to training camp, and he said, "I'll see you there." So Antonio Brown making a career change, apparently. Put that on the lower third right now. No, I think it's going to be a bunch of teams weighing the possibility of bringing in Antonio Brown at a bargain rate with a bunch of conditions. I mean, that's going to be the other part of this. How many conditions are going to be put forth before Antonio Brown steps into a facility? And really, you don't know. I mean, you can have all these agreements. You can have him saying that he's fully bought in. The problem is the behavior recently has been what many have described as irrational, and folks inside the league that I've talked to calling it irrational behavior, like this helmet thing that they couldn't understand why it took so long, why it couldn't be resolved, why he was making such a big deal about it. So it's going to be an interesting situation, and I also keep going back to this. The money is a big part of this because $30 million, if he knew for sure he was going to get that from the Raiders because it was supposed to be guaranteed, then he might make a different decision as to when to sign and for how much. So a lot of moving parts here with Antonio Brown as we head forward.
It's also important to note that Antonio Brown made as much money from the Oakland Raiders as Mike Garafolo is wearing ties. Zero. They paid him $0, even after giving him that contract upgrade. Made him the NFL's highest paid receiver. He had a workout bonus that he did not earn during the offseason. Everything else in terms of his 2019 compensation was wrapped up in this over $14 million base salary for this season. His contract guaranteed, fully guaranteed his 2019 and 2020 salaries. The Raiders, as part of those letters that they sent Brown within the past 24 hours, fining him $215,000, also said that they now consider those guarantees to be voided. Now, we could have a grievance at some point here to try to sort that out. Antonio Brown trying to get back some of the money. If you look at the contract language, the standard language that's in his deal about ways things can be voided, it includes things like did not practice with the team, left the team without permission, conduct detrimental. It's going to be a difficult case. That's not to say that they can't win it, but you have to proceed as if Antonio Brown is not getting paid. And a really good point that somebody just made to me a few minutes ago is this. If Antonio Brown was willing to have all these issues and give up $30 million guaranteed, $15 million this year, then if he does sign for $5 million or $3 million or the minimum, what's to say that you're not going to have the same level of issues? He has much less at stake at his next stop, even though at this point it's really about reestablishing his reputation here because we all know the guy can still play. It's just, can he fit in the building?
Yeah, and we talk about Antonio Brown losing this guaranteed money. Maybe a better way to say it is he gave up his guaranteed money, at least the $16 million that he would have been guaranteed for this year, in part because had he stayed on the team, had he not asked for his release, had he essentially just shown up and kind of handled it as most teammates are, basically just showing up and practicing, at the least he would have had a reason to contest the Raiders basically saying they were not going to give him termination pay. Him requesting his release probably gets him out of all of that and makes the fact that he received $0 from the Raiders scream out even louder. I mean, this is a guy who gave up $30 million, lost $30 million in guarantee that was going to come his way. And that's why it's going to be fascinating to see, does he go to a team that just simply guarantees him the most money, or does he go to a contender, a perennial contender? We all know, everyone in the world thinks he's going to New England. We all know that's sort of the speculation now. None of those teams are going to pay the kind of money that he's going to want. So does he just say, I'm going to take less for a year and try to cash in again next year?
And Mike, getting back to the fines, it seems like the fines were what escalated this at every point. We get to the ultimate point where they take away his guaranteed money, and then he asks for his release. Are teams required to find? Did the Oakland Raiders have no choice but to find Antonio Brown, or was that the decision that they made to punish him?
No, I mean, the teams can decide to look the other way on a bunch of stuff. And I believe Ian did some reporting last year on Antonio Brown and Le'Veon
right.
Bell, or maybe both. I can't remember what. I'm not done yet. What Ian said was, see, he already thinks whatever I say was accurate because it was Ian reporting it. So, but Ian said something to the effect of that there weren't that many fines, or maybe no fines for Bell, I think, at some point. Or some teams can look the other way. Some teams will tolerate a little bit more, and they'll get more goodwill out of the players. And maybe that's what happened here. Maybe Antonio Brown was used to a system in which the Steelers would look the other way on a lot of things. All right, now I do want to spin it forward with one little nugget here, and I find this interesting. If you're a fan of the show Hard Knocks, you remember Keelan Doss, the undrafted free agent that was featured on the show, performed pretty well in the preseason, then was a surprise cut. The Raiders were trying to get him back on the practice squad. Jacksonville offers him a deal. He goes to Jacksonville. I am told via sources that with Antonio Brown out of the picture, the Raiders tried to get Keelan Doss back today. And the Jaguars said, I'll tell you what, we'll up your salary. Even though you're on the practice squad, you will make a full salary of a player on the roster, a rookie minimum of $495,000. Keelan Doss said, sounds good to me. So he's going to stay on the Jaguars practice squad at a full salary. And seems like he's moved on from the Raiders, who could use some receiver help, and tried to bring back a guy that they signed as an undrafted free agent this year after the draft.
I have two things to respond to that. Both are very important. First of all, the Falcons did just announce a 3-year extension for Julio Jones, adding under their tweet that like weird SpongeBob emoji GIF that I'm not sure what it means. Anyway, they just announced that they have agreed to terms with Julio Jones. So now that is officially done. They're going to the plane. We're not going to talk about Julio Jones' extension ever again for the first time in 2 years. As far as the other thing you mentioned, the Steelers are not, Mike, a team that typically finds guys. If Antonio Brown was fined at all, I am not aware of it. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying I am not aware of it. They are not a team that handles it that way. The philosophy of the Steelers organization, of Mike Tomlin, is basically that the locker room polices itself. That is how they roll in Pittsburgh, and it allows them to manage a lot of different personalities. It allows them to get Antonio Brown on the field despite whatever else is going on, and there are a lot of different things going on. And then it gets to the Raiders, and you can understand why he gets 3 huge fines totaling almost $300,000, and he freaks out.
Raiders now have 5 wide receivers left on the roster, and that includes Dwayne Harris, who's more so a return specialist. Interesting nugget by Mike Garafolo that they did try to go get Keelan Doss. It's almost reminiscent of last year when they released Martavis Bryant before the season, only to immediately go and bring him back. If you're wondering about the status of Martavis Bryant, who remains suspended indefinitely under the substance abuse policy, I am told there has been no movement at this point toward Martavis Bryant being back. That is in the league's hands at this point to decide when or if he ends up being reinstated.